What's up, everybody? This is Albert. I'm he, him, his pronouns, and now we're back with another video, and this is part 2 of me having to discuss dissecting Assata Shakur's Assata an Autobiography. And for this video, we're going to be doing chapters 6 through 12. So we're going to be ending with chapter 12, and then the next video, part 3, is going to be discussing chapter 13 all the way into the postscript. So we're getting back to business. So chapter 6 is when Shakur was reminiscing her time and when she was living in Jamaica, and she was pretty much talking about the people that were there and pretty much the history of Jamaica too. And she was talking about how Jamaica, it used to be the community that she was in. It used to be a community of white people that were in, but then history happened, and I think it was like white flight or something that was going on. And she was pretty much talking about housing and how that came about into the community that she was part of, because it became from a white community that was pretty rich, wealthy, luxurious, and a tourist attraction to this low income black community where crime was pretty rampant. And it was pretty much you can delve into issues that the United States was going on when it comes to like the redlining in states like Illinois, such as Chicago and stuff like that, and Atlanta, Georgia, and stuff like that. And she was pretty much going into the history of that. And she said there was this place called and then her mom and her stepfather got into like another fight, so she ran away again. And then she was talking about this place called Greenwich Village, and it was like so many free-spirited people that were over there. There were a lot of musicians, there were a lot of carefree people there. And she was pretty much talking about trying to be self-sustainable because the household became very toxic. So she tried to go for jobs and stuff like that. And she was sitting in this bench, and this white man was trying to have a conversation with her. And then they were having a conversation, so they tried to have a relationship, not like sexual or something, anything like that, but it's just she needed to be away from her household, and she needed to go be in a place to stay in. And then the white man, she was pretty much giving some stories, like she was lying and stuff like that. She was giving some stories about like she was going through this tragedy and stuff like that. She made it bigger than it was in the household. And then the white man took her to dinner so she can get something to eat. And then she said she needed a place to stay, so she eventually got to the white man's apartment. And then he had like an extra bed or something. And then later that night, she woke up, tried to get a glass of water, and then the white man for some reason the white man woke up and just was stalking her, pretty much harassing her. And he said all these weird, creepy things like, I paid for dinner, I brought you into my house, and you're just doing whatever you do in my house. And it was so weird. And then that was like the signal to Assata that she needed to get out. And he even called her the N-word and stuff like that. So she was pretty much getting into white men and the history of them harassing black women. And it was on page 106. Because she even went into when she was trying to go for a job, and there was this and it was a restaurant job. She was a waitress, and the manager, a white man, kept harassing her. So talks about sexual harassment in the workplace and stuff like that. Like and he was manipulating her as well, gaslighting her, and he was pretty much doing all these things to trying to control her and abuse her. And yeah, she said, any black woman practically anywhere in America can tell you about being approached, propositioned, and harassed by white men. Many consider all black women potential prostitutes. In the village, this phenomenon was 10 times worse than elsewhere. It was almost impossible to go from one corner to the next without some white man hissing at you, following you, or jingling the money in his pockets. Yeah, so she was pretty much talking about how even when it comes to your manager, how he can use the salaries and holding money away from you to control you and to continue violating you. So she eventually stood her ground and saying, if you're not gonna give me my money, and because I'm gonna be leaving, and if you don't give me my money, I'm gonna tell the restaurant how much of a dog you are. And then he eventually gave in, and then she left and never came back. And then she was trying to she made friends with these people. I think it was Ronnie and John or something, but they were people that were they were these street people that do these schemes to people, trying to trick them into getting money and stuff like that. And then it was literally like, Assata, you're making them friends with a lot of strangers, and it was one case where she was trying to flirt with she was playing the game with Ronnie and them, and she was trying to play the scheme, and then the scheme involved her trying to flirt with this man. And consider she was 13 years old at the time, and I'm not surprised if it was like a grown man that got involved, and she was playing some flirtatious game, trying to invite him to a party and something like that, and doing all these lies and stuff like that. This chapter was pretty much going into how she became such a liar and stuff like that. Like, she trying to learn how to lie and play the game, and the culture of poverty that she was in. And it was very dangerous. Like she was able to get the money and stuff from the men, and she wasn't hurt or anything like that, but it was so dangerous, and she was impressed herself how she was able to do all that. And then she met this person named Miss Shirley, who is so funny. And Shakur met Miss Shirley because it was getting late, so Shakur needed somewhere to stay. She made enough money to go to a hotel, and Miss Shirley, I think, was working at the hotel, and Miss Shirley was reading the room and trying to understand Assata and stuff like that. That she treated Assata to some Chinese food, and then she was trying to get to know Assata and stuff like that, and then Assata was trying to give her these stories and stuff like that, and Miss Shirley said, "You think I'm believing all that?" So Miss Shirley was pretty much given pretty much the wisdom of the streets, and pretty much knows what's going on and can tell when someone is lying. So Assata couldn't play Miss Shirley. And then Miss Shirley tried to get Assata a job. So she tried to get her a job in this bar. And yeah, Miss Shirley got like a lot of connections too. And Assata was trying to do the job and apparently didn't do the job well. So she tried to make enough to pay back Miss Shirley for allowing Miss Shirley to stay with her, because I think Assata didn't even stay at the hotel, but would just stay with Miss Shirley at her place. And it was one time Assata came from work, and Miss Shirley came in the door with a razor, so had a beard and stuff like that. So Assata said, Miss Shirley is a... It was so funny. So I don't know if Miss Shirley was a trans woman or a drag queen, but I'm assuming pretty much a femme, pretty much, I know, with a beard. And it was so funny. And then Assata pretty much got a job as a barmaid waitress, and considering she was 13, so she had to do some things. So it was pretty much like the Hooters. It's called Tony's at this place that she was going to, and her job was pretty much looking pretty and stuff like that. And she was working from like 8 in the evening to 4 in the morning. So it was I can't imagine being in that place. And I'm assuming it was like during the summertime she was having this experience, because I can't imagine her being in junior high school and still doing all this stuff. But it was literally an experience. But yeah, she had this job as like a barmaid, Hooters-esque position, and she was pretty much talking about the people that were in her job, the customers that she had to serve. And she talked about how she even made connections with the band, because it was like a jazz band too, and she was trying to flirt with one of the workers, and then one of the workers had this white girlfriend. So she got into the black men, white women complex that I mentioned in Michelle Wallace's Black Macho and Myth of the Superwoman, when Assata heard all these things from black men on why they don't date black women and stuff like that. Let me see if I could find the page. Yeah, she heard black men say things like, "Man, I can't dig no spade chick. Give me an au fait every day." So, and yeah, he said that she heard that black men said that white women are sweeter, black women are evil, white women are more understanding, black women are more demanding. One of the things that really infuriated me was when they called black women sapphire. You know how you Negro women are sapphire, evil. So pretty much talking about the anti-black women stereotypes that black men internalized and put that onto black women and why they don't date them and stuff like that. So that contributes to desirability politics, to why they go in relationships with white women. And yeah, and what was next? Yeah, she was talking about a lot of sexual harassment that she was going through, and it was getting to the point where she was going through this experience. There was this, I assume it's a black man, and he was very friendly to her, and then he tried to invite her to a party, and she said, okay, like, I think he was a regular customer, so they were establishing this relationship, and then they came to and then they went to his place, and she noticed that nobody was there, and then she was waiting for other party goers, and then she noticed that other people were coming to his place, but they were all men. There was no women that were coming, and then she noticed all the men were going to a separate room, and she heard them talking, and it got to a place where one of the men came out and were sitting next to Assata and tried to touch her inappropriately, and she tried to refuse, and then the other men were ganging up on her, and then she was talking about how she heard about pulling a train. So that's pretty much code for gang rape and stuff like that. So they were about to gang rape her. And trigger warning, sorry, sexual violence and stuff, and any sexual assault and gang rape. And she was pinned to the floor, and they were talking about trying to take turns, and she was trying to move and escape. And eventually she knocked out an ashtray, and then one of the men, it's just one of the men that owned the place, and said, "Stop, my mom is gonna be mad and she's gonna have a fit if this house is messed up." And that was code for Assata to break free and knock down vases, kicking the tables. So it got to a place where she said, if y'all don't leave, your mom is not gonna recognize her house. So she was able to fight off the situation that she was in, and she didn't get violated, but I know that was a lot of trauma. So it was, thank God she didn't get raped, but I know there was a lot of trauma that she had to reckon with. And then all the party goers were leaving, all the men were leaving, and and they were threatening her still, like, we're going to be waiting outside for you. And then she talked to the dude that was owning the place, and then told him to go call me a cab, get another person to go get me a cab. And then they walked to a neighbor, and she was holding a vase the entire time, like it looked like out of a movie or something like that. So it was pretty scary, I can tell, just from how Shakur was writing this scene. And then the person that she eventually reached to was a very nice black woman, and the black woman and her husband were able to help Assata secure a cab. And then she was able to go to I think to her aunt Evelyn's place. So yeah, so that, I think that was that was pretty much the end. But there was this paragraph that stuck out to me. She said, "The more I watched how boys and girls behave, the more I read, and the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that this behavior could be traced directly back to the plantation, when slaves were encouraged to take the misery of their lives out on each other instead of on the master. The slave masters taught us we were ugly, less than human, unintelligent, and many of us believed it. Black people became breeding animals, studs and mares. A black woman was fair game for anyone at any time. The master or a visiting guest or any redneck who desired her, the slave master would order her to have 6 with this stud, 7 with that stud, for the purpose of increasing his stock. She was considered less than a woman. She was a cross between a whore and a workhorse. Black men internalize the white man's opinion of black women, and if you ask me, a lot of us still act like we're back on the plantation with massa pulling the strings." So yeah, even today, even after this book was published, you can talk about how black men weren't protecting black women, how misogynoir can be perpetrated by black men. And I say, for example, when it comes to police violence against black communities, how we don't even talking about the sexual violence that police put onto black women and stuff like that, and how that's not considered police brutality in discussions when we go into movements for Black lives and stuff like that, and how black women, the violence that they go through is neglected. Like, the most unprotected, the most neglected, the most unprotected person is the black woman in America. And yeah, so that was pretty much the gist of chapter 6. So chapter 6 was talking about the sexual harassment and patriarchal and gender-based violence that Assata went through, even as a black, that Assata Shakur went as a black woman. So talking about the erasure of black women that they go through, and she clearly didn't go to the cops because she wouldn't be protected by the state. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of chapter 6. And And I think Miss Shirley was pretty much like the comedic relief that Ashata needed, because Miss Shirley was also like a good mentor for Ashata. Like, you need to do something for yourself. You're no good in this environment, because it was a hostile environment that no one should be going through. And you might get into a situation where you are gonna get, and you're gonna regret going. And here we are in this situation. And she probably blamed herself, and she shouldn't blame herself for trusting someone and stuff like that. And it eventually came into this traumatic situation. But the thing is, she was smart and strategic and how to get out of the situation, and fortunately didn't have to suffer from gang rape. And yeah, that was the end of chapter 6. So chapter 7, we're going back into the trials. So this one was a bank robbery trial that she was had to go through. And she was pretty much talking about the descriptions of jury panels and stuff like that. Like, it was I think this was the Morris County. Yeah, the Morris County one. Oh no, this was in New York. So she was going through from trials from New Jersey all the way to New York and back and forth. And she was talking about the description of jury panels and how the majority of them are white people. And even the black people, they look like they were extras on a soap opera and stuff like that. So she was pretty much talking about black people, their erasure, and serving in juries and stuff like that. Like, you can go back to my Michelle Alexander on the New Jim Crow, is because if black people aren't registered to vote, they couldn't serve juries and stuff like that. If you're a black person who's incarcerated, you were stripped your right to vote. Therefore, you're stripped your right to serve in a jury. And yeah, stuff like that she was bringing up. And she pretty much talking about in the previous experience of the trial, when she was talking about her fight with her Aunt Evelyn. Her and her Aunt Evelyn were able to resolve their conflicts, so she was able to go back into the trial and represent Ashata. And then she was going through the trial with Sandiata. And yeah, she was talking about the trial, and talking about the cross-examination that her Aunt Evelyn gave to jurors. And pretty much Aunt Evelyn knows how to play the game and stuff like that, to give her more black jurors in the stand, because she was talking about how the white jurors don't have black friends and stuff like that. So you probably can't consider the experience that Ashata was going through. And yeah, so stuff like that. And there was even this book called Target Blue by this man named Robert Daly. And it was this book that pretty much he's racist and talking about pretty much antagonizing black movements during the 70s, especially the Black Panthers. And the judge was asking one of the jurors, "Have you ever read Target Blue?" And that juror said, yes. And then the judge said, "When did you read this book?" And the juror said, "As a matter of fact, I'm reading it right now." And it was even upstairs in the jury room, the book. So you're not fit to have the judgment that will fit the standards of the trial and stuff like that. And then yeah, she said, like, even the Nazi parties were outside the courtroom with their Save Our Police and the death penalty and white power placards. And pretty much talking about how hectic it was. And then she was talking about how she went back to prison during the trial after the session. And she was becoming so numb to the prison culture. Like, she was eating the food like it was her mom's home cooking or something like that. Like, and she talked about how bad prison food was. Like, she became numb to everything. Like, she was exercising a lot, and she was in this diet or something, and then she realized that she was pregnant, and she was amazed. She was amazed, like, wow, I never expected that I would ever have a child and ever be pregnant. And yeah, there were these pregnancy tests with the prison doctor, and she was trying to check with the prison doctor, and the prison doctor kept saying things like, you're just constipated and something like that. And Assata didn't believe it. Like, she was getting the impression that she might be pregnant and stuff like that. And then she was going through all these things that happens when you're pregnant and stuff like that. Like, you're craving a lot of food, and you going through these mood swings and stuff like that. And the doctor was still denying that she was pregnant and stuff like that. Like, it was even to the point where she was giving numerous pregnancy tests. Like, she keeps giving urine samples. So when she said, and she said by the time she was giving a second urine sample, she was pretty much getting the impression that she's pregnant and stuff like that. And she met with Sundiata's lawyer, Ray Brown, and Evelyn, and they pretty much said, yeah, you're pregnant. And yeah, that was pretty much it. She said, I spent the next few days in a virtual daze, a joyous daze. A person was inside of me, someone who was going to grow up to walk and talk, to love and laugh. To me, it was a miracle of all miracles and deeply spiritual. The odds against this baby being conceived were so great it boggled my mind, and yet it was happening. It seemed so right, so beautiful, in surroundings that were so ugly. I was filled with emotion. Already I was deeply in love with this child. Already I talked to it and worried about it and wondered how it was feeling and what it was thinking. I would lie in my cell wondering about his or her life, wondering what kind of life it would have, what kind of people it would have, what kind of values it would have, and what it would think of all the madness that would surround it. Sometimes I felt so helplessly protective, wondering when my baby would be called the N-word for the first time, wondering when the full horror and degradation of being black in America would descend on my baby, how many wolves hid behind the bushes to eat my child. But there were so many happy things that I thought about, too. I wondered when would be the first time my child would sit down and seriously appreciate the glory of a sunset and marvel at the wonders of nature, or when he or she would smack lips and lick fingers over a sweet potato pie, or kiss strawberries and drink lemonade. It has always intrigued me how the world can be so beautiful and so ugly at the same time. I wanted with all my being for my baby to experience with many types and sides of love and friendship, and to know and understand selflessness and generosity, struggle and sacrifice, honesty, courage, and so many of the sentiments that have given me strength and have made my life worth living. In these days, I was in such a state of sensitivity, and I thought that I barely noticed what was going on around me. So yeah, so she was experiencing the joy of being pregnant and how the possibility of bringing a child into this world. And I think that was so beautiful. And it pretty much speaks to a lot of what mothers go through, and not even just mothers, just generally people that are pregnant and stuff like that. And she was talking about her experience with the prison doctor after realizing that the confirmation that she got pregnant. And the doctor was still weird because he was checking her and then said that you might need an abortion. And Assata was like, no, like, you're insane. Like, I'm having this baby and there's nothing, like, this is literally my saving hope in life right now. I need to have this baby. And yeah, and he was pretty much Yeah, just being trash and stuff like that. Like, it's pretty much talks about the importance of not having black women when they were going through the medical industry and stuff like that, and even to the point where they're pregnant and going through childbirth. Like, even white doctors are mistreating black women. And even earlier in the first chapter, when she was recovering from the shootout. And yeah, so Evelyn and Ray Brown were trying to arrange for Assata to have a private gynecologist, and they were able to find this black gynecologist. His name was Dr. Garrett, and literally you see the difference between this prison doctor and the doctor that and gynecologist that cares about black people. So that's pretty much, there was literally a study how said how black pregnancies were more successful with a black doctor. So Dr. Garrett is literally fitting this statistic because he literally cared about Assata's well-being and understand, and he wasn't like a black bourgeois kind of person. Like, he understands the struggles that black people go through, and he's probably aware of this type of subject. And this paragraph stuck out to me. Shakur said, about 2 days after his first visit, Dr. Garrett came to visit me. When he finished examining me, he said, Assata, I don't want to worry you, but I think you should be hospitalized. It's nothing serious, strictly a precautionary measure. You're in no condition to proceed with a trial. You need a few weeks of complete bed rest. There's a possibility the judge will try to push you into that trial right away without regard for your medical condition. Assata, there is no way we are going to let that happen. I'm prepared to fight all the way for your right as a human being to receive decent medical care and for your baby to be born healthy. I'm doing the same for you as I would for any other patient. You should be hospitalized. There isn't a responsible doctor in the world who wouldn't agree with that opinion, and I'm prepared to testify in any court that to deny you proper medical care would be tantamount to committing murder. I'll be going in a very short time to give a medical report about your conditions to the judge. I will do my best to convince him of the seriousness of this matter. I think he'll listen to reason. I'm sure the judge will go along with the findings of 2 board-certified gynecologists. But if worse comes to worse and the judge denies our motion, I will see to it personally that this jail and the courtroom are surrounded by the right to life people by tomorrow morning. So, yeah, that's the assurance that Assata needed from a doctor, especially in the condition that she was going through, and the fact that she's pregnant. And, you know, black women in pregnancy, you'll never know if you'll ever even have the baby, or even if you survived. So, yeah. And then it apparently raised the question, and pretty much she was able to get her trial excused. But Sundiata still had to go to trial, so they had to go through separate trials. So that's pretty much when she got separated from Sundiata at that point. And yeah, that was pretty much the end of chapter 7. And yeah, I think that was it for chapter 7. So for chapter 8, Chapter 8 is when this is going back to the village in Greenwich Village, which is in New York. And she was talking about spending time with Evelyn, and this was pretty much this seems like it was pretty much a tribute to her Aunt Evelyn, because Evelyn taught her how to organize and set up a room, and expose her to things like museums, Broadway, and pretty much made Assata cultured. And she was pretty much talking about the makeup of the village too, because there were like so many the village is literally like, there are so many different types of people. There's a white middle class part, there's a upper west side, there's a liberal stronghold. And she was talking about liberalism, and how she pretty much gave her perspective of liberalism. And she said, I have never really understood exactly what a liberal is, though, since I heard liberals express every conceivable opinion on every conceivable subject. As far as I can tell, you have the extreme right, who are fascist, racist, capitalist dogs like Ronald Reagan, who come right out and let you know where they're coming from. And on the opposite end, you have the left, who are supposed to be committed to justice, equality, and human rights. And somewhere between these 2 points is the liberal. As far as I'm concerned, liberal is the most meaningless word in the dictionary. History has shown me that as long as some white middle-class people can live high on the hog, take vacations to Europe, send their children to private schools, and reap the benefits of their white skin privileges, then they are liberals. But when times get hard and money gets tight, they pull off that liberal mask and you think you're talking to Adolf Hitler. They feel sorry for the so-called underprivileged just as long as they can maintain their own privileges. And I'm thinking even to today with the COVID-19 pandemic, how a lot of this is affecting low-income Black communities, specifically on where the virus is going to. Even in my county, Prince George's County, it's not a low-income community, but it's a predominantly Black community, right? County, and it's pretty rampant in this area too. But it's pretty much goes into white liberalism. And how white liberals, they would talk about how we should be having equality, freedom, and all that stuff. But when it comes to when it's time for their help is needed, all of a sudden they're into this individualistic approach. And said, I'm one paycheck away from poverty and stuff like that, when you know they have 6-figure income and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's pretty much what Shakur was critiquing, and I appreciate that she did that. And, yeah, she was pretty much talking about the community and, talking about her Aunt Evelyn and how Evelyn was studying to become a trial lawyer for Black and poor people and stuff like that. And even if they couldn't afford, she would still represent them. Like, that's literally what you call an advocate lawyer. Like, it pretty much talks about how she was studying law and stuff like that, and how helpful it was for her to enter that profession and save Black communities from either further oppression. And yeah, and Evelyn was pretty much, and she was talking about how once in a while I'd be tempted to give myself a 5-finger discount going back into when she was learning about stealing. But Evelyn was so honest that it rubbed off on me. I was becoming so goody-goody, I couldn't stand myself. I really underwent a great change. So that was pretty funny. And then she was talking about when she was going back to school. And yeah, I think she was going back to school. And there was and she was going to this integrated school. It was called Junior High School 44. And the white teacher said that Bach and Beethoven and Mozart, that's the only music that matters. So they were talking about so she was talking about a music class, and this racist white teacher was teaching it. And she said to this white teacher, we were uncultured and uncouth. For her, Latin music, jazz, rhythm, and blues were trashy, and we were trash. She was a racist who would have denied it to the bitter end. A lot of people don't know how many ways racism can manifest itself, and in how many ways people fight against it. When I think of how racist, how Eurocentric our so-called education in America is, it staggers my mind. And when I think back to some of those kids who were labeled troublemakers and problem students, I realize that many of them were unsung heroes who fought to maintain some sense of dignity and self-worth. So she was talking about how the schools, as of today, you can see them as a style of incarceration, and Michelle Alexander went into it, how we punish students and think something like suspensions is accountability and makes the child learn better, when you're just giving them less opportunity to actually learn from their mistakes. So that's pretty much what Assata was going about. And then she said, nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who were oppressing them. So in this section, she was talking about the nonviolence approach that was preached during the 60s because of Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement. And she was pretty much interrogated how she thinks that approach is like the only way to achieve freedom. And it was in the NAACP office, and someone was asking her, what would you do if they pushed you? And she said, nothing. I just keep on doing what I came to do. What would they do if they kicked you? I pray to the Lord to forgive them for their sins. What would you do if they spit on you? I just go on singing. Well, that was too much for me. I could take someone pushing me, hitting me, kicking me, but to sit there and let some cracker dog spit on me, well, just the idea of it made me want to fight. So, yeah, so she was talking about how the nonviolence approach, it doesn't always, sometimes you have to defend yourself, pretty much. That's like literally, that's pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much the thing that's being critiqued in this part of the chapter, and I think that's reasonable. And she said, how I remember how I felt in those days. I wanted to be an American just like any other American. I wanted a piece of America's apple pie. I believe we could get our freedom just by appealing to the consciences of white people. I believed that the North was really interested in integration and civil rights and equal rights. I used to go around saying our country, our president, our government. When a national anthem was played or the Pledge of Allegiance spoken, I stood at attention and felt proud. I don't know what in the hell I was feeling proud about, but I felt the juice of patriotism running through my blood. So she's talking about how American patriotism and how it made her believe in these white standards and stuff like that, and she doesn't need that to be be liberated, and black people don't need to feel and have to confide to those standards to be free. And yeah, that was pretty much that part. And yeah, that was the end of chapter 8. And yeah, so we're pretty much talking about the strategies of nonviolence and militancy and by any means necessary approach that was throughout the civil rights movement, especially. And then chapter 9, she was taken to the Roosevelt Hospital to treat her pregnancy, and she was talking about how she was just there for a hot minute and then went back to prison. And they didn't even give her milk or something like that. Like they gave her such cruel treatment while she was pregnant. It's like it was medical maltreatment for pregnancy. And they keep separating her from Dr. Garrett and made all these ways to put her with the prison doctor to focus on her pregnancy. So they literally try to do whatever they can to destroy her, like internally, and so they want her to be mentally damaged and psychologically damaged. Like it's psychological terror right here. And then her Aunt Evelyn and Rat Brown were able to file a medical maltreatment suit, and they pretty much won. And Dr. Garrett they were able to get Dr. Garrett to treat her pregnancy and stuff like that. Yeah, she said, meanwhile, the lawyers obtained another court order from the New York court permitting Dr. Garrett to continue treating me. When he first came to Rikers, I was in the infirmary. They told him the court order was no good and that he couldn't see me. So the court they're even lying, stuff like that. They lied that they approved the court order and that he couldn't see me. I was left in the room for 3 days with a woman who turned out later to have an active tuberculosis. It was May and they had turned the heat off. It got cold again and women were having seizures, methadone withdrawal, and one sister who they said had pneumonia all piled blankets on their beds. The sister got worse and worse. Finally, they brought her to Elmhurst Hospital where they discovered she did have tuberculosis. I found this out later when she was returned to Rikers, kept in isolation, and the doctors wore masks and gloves where they visited her. And she said how she had moniliia, and she got all these diseases and stuff like that because the doctors weren't treating her properly. So yeah, get into the history of racism in the medical industry and stuff like that. Like, I'm gonna get in some text that involved about that. And yeah, there were even demonstrations to trying to get Dr. Garrett to treat Assata. So eventually Dr. Garrett was able to help deliver her, because she was in labor. She was pretty much in labor at that point, and Dr. Garrett had to come through, and they got Dr. Garrett away again, and then they had this white doctor who was racist and stuff like that, and apparently Assata, her water broke, and then when the white doctor was trying to treat her, she was bleeding, so she said, "Get me Dr. Garrett, and Dr. Garrett only," and Dr. Garrett came. And then they were able to deliver her daughter, Kekuya Amala Alagbala Shakur. So yeah, they were able to deliver Kekuya, and then Assata didn't really even get to see her until 6 p.m. when Dr. Garrett had to go back home because she was delivering in the morning, and Dr. Garrett went back home to go to sleep and then do some shifts. And then when he came back to check on Assata, she still didn't see the baby. So she didn't even get to breastfeed. So it was literally ridiculous. So Dr. Garrett was able to fight for her, and she was able to breastfeed like every 4 hours. And then she was only allowed to shower a day, and she only had to use mouthwash, like no toothpaste and toothbrush. Like, they were literally not letting her be doing human things. And then she was separated from her child, literally. She was came from the hospital, and I forgot to tell y'all, while she was in the hospital bed and stuff like that, she was handcuffed to the bed and stuff like that. Like, it's literally something that pregnant women should never have to go through. And it was literally like police everywhere, and it's not helping her with the nervousness and anxiety that she was going through. And then, yeah, she went back to prison. She was separated from her daughter. Literally didn't see her daughter until years later. So, yeah. So that happened. And she went back to Rikers Island. And then she wrote this poem, which was my favorite of one of my favorites in the book. It's called "What Is Left," and just Google "What Is Left," and that's like one of my favorite poems that she wrote here. And that was it for chapter 9. So chapter 10, she was this is like a good one of her this is like the chapter where she's talking about her political consciousness and her radical politics, how she grew into them. So she started working, and she was working with a lot of white companies, and she was talking about being paid low wages and stuff like that. So like, she was so invested in trying to find a job, like she didn't even care if there were medical benefits, 1 week vacation, and there were poor working conditions, and if there was low pay. She just wanted to work. And that's what capitalism does to you. Like, you have to keep working, and it's like, everyone should be secure, and you shouldn't have to have all these benefits just for working and stuff like that. And then, she said, my life was being spent pushing around meaningless papers that had nothing to do with living. And she was talking about, I think she left school. She didn't even graduate from high school. So she was taking some night schools for a GED, but she wasn't like committed to it. But she went in, she was talking about when she was at this white job, they were talking about riots that were going on in I think the 60s, And I think it was like the Watts riots in Newark and Detroit and all those type of riots that were going on in the 60s, Los Angeles. And she was talking about how a white coworker said, it's a shame, isn't it? And they're burning down their own neighborhoods, robbing their own stores and stuff like that. And Assata was talking about how she had to face all those microaggressions because it's from white people that don't care about black people. And then she said when the secretaries and a whole bunch of her white coworkers were telling about she was hearing that argument and stuff like that. She said, "What do you mean they're burning down their houses? They don't own those houses. They don't own those stores. I'm glad they burned down those stores because those stores were robbing them in the first place." And then it got to a high tense work environment, and then she was eventually fired like weeks later. Like she knew she was going to be fired eventually. And then she was like, "I don't care." And that makes me thinking about, as literally with the George Floyd protests, how a lot of people were focusing on properties and stuff like that because of capitalism, and they were more concerned about Target and stuff like that, where Target exploited their workers, Walmart and all that stuff. So it's literally how you can literally see like stealing as like something that belonged to me in the first place or something like that. And and then she was talking about how she met some African people in this place called the West End. I think it's some sort of social gathering place. And she was with one of her friends. And the African students, they were pretty intelligent. They were studying at Columbia. And then they brought up Vietnam, because it was about the Vietnam War that was coming up during the 60s. And pretty much tells you how America puts on this propaganda that they're fighting for your democracy, but they're really fighting communism. And Assata was talking, and they were asking Assata, "How do you feel about the Vietnam War?" And Assata said, "It's all right, I guess." And they were saying, "What you mean it's all right?" And they said, "Aren't they fighting for democracy?" And then she pretty much got into the real and then they pretty much educated her on the real history of what is going on with the Vietnam War, how they're pretty much fighting for corporate interests, money, and stuff to and exploit the Vietnamese people. And it's literally pretty much anti-Asian racism that's justifying the war on Vietnam. And pretty much talking about the black people that were fighting in Vietnam, why you're fighting for a country that doesn't even care about you. And they were pretty much talking about imperialism and colonialism and the ways in which capitalism intersects with all these things. And she was talking about how Vietnam got like that, and she said one of the African students explained French colonialization, exploitation, brutalization, the starvation, and illiteracy, and the long fight waged and won in the North, and U.S. involvement in propping up a phony government after the French got their butts kicked. So she pretty much got to learn about military history, American military history, and how it's complicit in with capitalist tendencies and imperialist endeavors. And that's how she pretty much got into she pretty much questioned everything she internalized in life and what she was socialized to believe about patriotism, the American dream, and stuff like that, when really she was brainwashed. And she was shook. One of a good quote she said is, "Only a fool lets somebody else tell them who his enemy is, and always decide who your enemies are for yourself, and never let your enemies choose your enemies for you." So Yeah, pretty much tells you about how ignorance can be blissful, but when you're educated, you have such consciousness that you just everything just irritates you because of what systemic oppression is doing to society. And yeah, she got into this political awakening, and she wants to help free the ghetto, not run away from it and leaving my people behind. Like, she started to care about the most marginalized communities with her politics and tries to center them. And then she was talking about it was after they left the club. She was talking about peers and how capitalism makes you try to compare your life to others, and like others are doing this and that, and you're doing your own thing. But it's, yeah, she said, she had this quote said, I got, yeah, she said, my friends were dying from OD and going into the army. My girlfriends had babies and were looking and sounding old. Nice old men sitting in the park weren't nice old men at all, but were busy masturbating under their newspapers. I didn't believe in anything. It seemed that everybody was in some kind of bag. The dope bag, the whiskey brown paper bag, the Jesus bag, the love bag, the sex bag, the make it bag, and when none of those bags were doing anybody any good. I was looking for my own bag, but the pickings were slim. So she was pretty much talking about how comparison is the thief of joy, and you literally shouldn't focus on your others' journeys. You should focus on yourself, and if you need help, you can get others along with that journey. So going back into Adrienne Marie Brown's pleasure activism, and how you should pretty much focus on yourself and your destinies and your futures, and how that will contribute to the liberation of not just for yourself but for others. And like, don't make life just a race and stuff like that. And we all have our own journeys. And then she was talking about the black bourgeoisie, because she got fired from her white job, so she started thinking about working for black jobs. So she was working at the Johnson Publications, which published for Ebony and Jet magazine, and y'all know those are pretty much like the black magazines right now and stuff like that. But she was talking about how it wasn't as intense as she was in the white job. Like, she felt like she could be proud and being black. But then she was talking about she was reading some magazines, and she was talking about the black celebrities and how they wore all these expensive clothes. And then one of her black coworkers were talking about what is that supposed to mean? That's a win for black people if black people are able to afford expensive things. And then it got into an argument, and she was pretty much talking about how black people are still suffering even with these black celebrities, and the black upper class and the black 1%, black capitalists are still contributing to black people are still oppressing with all those things existing. And then I think she moved to another job. And then, yeah, she said these black people went around acting as if there was no such thing as a prejudice, and that all you have to do was study and you could be president of the world. At the agency, we were working hard for an equal opportunity conference. The idea was to have black college graduates from all over the country participate in interviews with representatives from the major corporations in America. Almost all of the big corporations were involved, and the graduates paid a substantial fee. And yeah, she was talking about how there were quote unquote qualified black students that could come, and they only had to major in STEM, and they couldn't, and even if they excelled in subjects like English, history, sociology, they were out of the running and stuff like that. They couldn't attend the conference. Like, it was only STEM because industrialization and stuff like that, and industrialization because of capitalism, and capitalism because of white supremacy. And yeah, she's pretty much talking about how we're focused on black executives as our idea as freedom, when we should be talking about the black poor and how they don't have access to healthy meals, access to health care, funding for education, and all these things that would have actually contributed to the liberation of Black people and the Black liberation struggle. And yeah, she got into an argument with a coworker about that because it's only specific Black students. Why not just all Black students? Invite more Black people to into our Black table. And yeah, she said she even left that job, and then after that she started lying on her resume because she said everything is a lie in America, and the thing that keeps it going is that so many people believe the lie. Because she lied in her resume that she was able to get all these jobs because she worked as like a bookkeeper, and she was going through all these background checks, and then all of that came into an end, and she got fired and stuff like that. So this was pretty much her radicalizing chapter when she was pretty much coming into face with what capitalism, imperialism, and systems of exploitation are doing to people. And yeah, that was the end of chapter 10. So now we're on chapter 11. Yeah, so this one goes into the bank robbery indictment in New York. This is a really short chapter, but she was charged for another bank robbery trial, and then she was talking about the photo that was used to that led to her accusation and her charge, because she was talking about how that summer that the bank robbery happened, she wasn't even at the scene, but for some reason they were able to get a photo, and she said the FBI did something with that photo because it was a wanted poster of her face. Like, she said, you put anybody in a monkey suit and they're going to end up looking like a monkey. Besides, someone had told me about some tricks the FBI uses. They take a photo of you in the same angle as the bank photo and superimpose the transparency of the bank photo over it. So it's literally like the state can do what it is to do the job, and that job is to oppress Black people, even if it's not for a crime that's justified. And yeah, that was pretty much what was going on with that. And then it was this there were other people that were charged in his trial. So it was these people that Assata never knew. So it was these people named Ronald Myers and Rima Alagbala. So pretty much talk about how they were set up pretty much by the government. So if you go back to My Michelle Alexander New Jim Crow and Angela Davis, Our Prisons Obsolete, and the history of Black people getting framed for certain crimes, that's literally what's going on in this chapter. And yeah, so she was pretty much talking about how she felt like a mother spirit towards Rima Alagbala and Ronald Myers because they were so young. Like, I think both of them were under the age of 20, and they were young and Black, and you're like, they're literally going to throw their life away and just for unjustly imprisoning and incarcerating them. And yeah, that was it. She said, but seeing this brother awakened such a sense of righteous indignation in us so-called veterans that we were all bitten by a sudden burst of energy. Because I think by this time, she was somewhere in her 30s, so she felt like some protection. Like, she was thinking about this young spirit to carry on the revolution, especially it's the same thing she was talking about when she was giving birth to Kikuya and Simba being pregnant, and what Kamau talked to her when it comes to Black children and how important it is for them to help continue the struggle for Black people. And yeah, and then she eventually learned that Rima got killed when he was trying to escape prison, and she said he got killed because he wanted to be free and stuff like that. And she wrote this beautiful poem for Rima, and it was called Youngblood, and it was another good poem. It's another one of my favorites. And then Assata gave her opening statement because she was preparing for the next trial session, since Rima was pretty much was out of the trial, but her and Ronald Myers were still on the case. And she gave this powerful opening statement. Like, it was to the energy of her "To My People" speech. Like, that, this is just as powerful. And if I find the statement somewhere, I'll put it on the description box below. But it was so powerful. And pretty much talking about, like, I'm not expecting justice, but she was talking to the jurors, like, y'all are going to be the representatives of justice and stuff like that. Pretty much giving some a fighting spirit during her opening statement. And then she said, after that, the jury got examined again, and there was so much examination. Like, her Aunt Evelyn is literally like her lifesaver. And it got to the point where her and Ronald got acquitted. So they didn't have to go to prison for that crime, for what the trial had done. And I know after that, she went back to prison to face another charge. So it's literally like she can never win after going through all these trials. And then the final chapter, chapter 12, was when she was talking about, I think it was some friend that encouraged her and motivated her to keep working. Like, you have so much life to live, and you should just keep working and then actually get an education, and that can really help you in the long run. And then she got into a community college, and yeah, she was pretty much talking about how during that time, it was like this must be like during the more during the 60s, because there were a lot of Black studies programs that were being introduced into college departments and stuff like that. And she became so fascinated with Black studies programs, and she got to learn more about Black beauty and stuff like that. And she had this Afrocentric perspective that was introduced to her, and she was talking about how she never got to learn how in school she was also always told about George Washington Carver, Harriet Tubman, and all those things everyone knows about, like it's Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King Jr. and stuff like that. But she pretty much just learned about them. But she finally got to learn about Nat Turner and slave rebellions and stuff like that. Like, she never learned about that slaves that abolitionist movements were to the point where slaves actually fought to abolish slavery. So she learned about the Nat Turner slave rebellion, and she was talking about learning about plays by Amari Baraka and Ed Bullins, and she also learned about Sinkay. If y'all know about the movie Amistad, that it talks about Sinkay and how he fought, and how slavery wasn't able to happen. And I forgot which I think it was England or somewhere, but he was able to fight for the about to be slaves there. And then she got into the history of Abraham Lincoln and the truth behind the Civil War, and how it's not for moral reasons. And Abraham Lincoln didn't want to free the slaves. If he wanted to save the Union. He didn't care about the slaves or something. And that's pretty much how it got to the Civil War. And the Civil War was about economics, because Northern industrialists it's capitalism and stuff like that. And Northern industrialists were fighting against Southern white plantation owners. And so many laws were going on. Like, there were a lot of recessions that were going on. And the Northern economy was so powerful that the Southern economy had no choice. Like, the Northern economy was able to produce all these manufacturing goods. Like, that's pretty much what gave them the advantage during the war. So that's pretty much what happened. And then she got into Abraham Lincoln, how he didn't care about Black people. Even Black abolitionists were criticizing Abraham Lincoln. And read the book. It had like what Lincoln actually stated, and actually they were cited It was actually cited and stuff like that. It had like the year he said all these stuff, and he even said in his speeches how he would have preserved the institution of slavery, and he had no intention of actually abolishing it. And it just because of the economy that he eventually gave up and led to the Emancipation Proclamation. And she said to solve the problems in industrial cities, many called for reforms such as the abolition of debtors' prisons, an end to the laws that kept white men who did not own property from voting, free education, the right to strike, an end to child labor, establishment of a 10-hour workday, and granting of land in the West to poor people in the cities. Big business proposed the expansion of capitalism and industry to other parts of the country, and this was where Northern capitalists clashed with Southern white slave owners. So that's pretty much what I just said. And yeah. And then Assata talked about how she went into all these theories, all this study and stuff like that she felt motivated and enthused to do some practice and actually activism and do something within these theories. She said theory without practice is just as incomplete as practice without theory. And the two have to go together, and I was determined to do both. And she was talking about how there's all these organizations that were made when she was in community college. How there were Garveyites, there was a Malcolm X organization of Afro-American unity, members of the NAACP of that college, and she was learning about Marcus Garvey, who led literally the largest mass movement of Black people probably that we know as of today through the Pan-African movements. And she never learned about him until community college. And she said, no movement can survive unless it is constantly growing and changing with the times. It isn't growing, it's stagnant. If it isn't growing, it's stagnant. And without the support of the people, no movement for liberation can exist, no matter how correct its analysis of the situation is. That's why political work and organizing are so important. Unless you are addressing the issues people are concerned about and contributing positive direction, they'll never support you. The first thing the enemy tries to do is isolate revolutionaries from the masses of people, making us horrible and hideous monsters so that our people will hate us. So that's literally the importance of community organizing and all these mass movements and grassroots organizing. That's literally important, especially when it comes to like not even just social justice. If it's political campaigns, like it's important to reach to the people and explain why they should care about these issues. So when it comes to like voting, help someone register to vote, go drive them to the voting polls or something like that. That's why I get annoyed when someone tells you vote or die or something like that. Like people aren't registered to vote. People probably because of mass incarceration couldn't vote and stuff like that. And literally through this pandemic, a lot of evictions are being caused, so people don't have addresses so they can register to the vote. So you have to do all this knowledge and actually help mass mobilize people. And that's the importance of organizing, no matter how correct you want to be. And she said, the schools we go to are reflections of the society that created them. Nobody is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. Nobody is going to teach you your true history, teach you your true heroes. If they know that the knowledge will help set you free, schools in America are interested in brainwashing people with Americanism, giving them a little bit of education and training them in skills needed to fill the positions the capitalist system requires. As long as we expect America's schools to educate us, we will remain ignorant. And I'm thinking about schools that like enforce uniforms for people because they think everyone is going through the same path, which is like a office or something like that, a business or corporation or something like that. And that's literally not everyone's journey. Not everyone is going to be in that situation. And literally, sometimes you just have to take it upon yourself to learn these things. Like myself, I'm not learning. Like Assata Shakur, I'm getting so much knowledge from her, and I had to take it upon myself to buy this book and actually get some education that I needed that probably would have contributed to the liberation of Black people. And she was pretty much talking about she was also talking about Afrocentrism and organizing in higher education. So she was talking about student governments and stuff like that, and pretty much the fight with university administration. Like, I can relate when I went to Towson University, because I was in the Student Government Association there, and we had to make resolutions to go through the administration, and they have to approve, and things are done through that. And then Shakur was talking with other college students, and I think they were through the organizations, not with student government, and they were talking about what can we do to liberate us. We have to control we have to have community controlled employment, we have to community controlled housing, community controlled colleges, we have to control the welfare state, the city, and federal agencies and stuff like that. And it can't be bureaucratic. And that's what a lot of university administrations had to function off of, and its bureaucratic governments, and had to confide by government standards. And they tried to get like a student teacher project initiative going, and administration wasn't able to let them do that. But then they were able to get records about where the university president lives. Like, he lived in a rent-free house paid by taxpayer dollars, and he has like a 6-figure income or something like that. And when they exposed that, you can do this, but you can't give a student teacher project. So they were able to do that. So Shakur talked about her experience being a student teacher, because she was teaching English and stuff like English, math and arts and crafts to some little kids. And she got into her mother's shoes. She talked about the experience being an educator and how these children react. And she tried to do a decolonial style of education, in which the children, they could take control of the education as well. And it's not just what Shakur wanted. She wanted the students to take it upon themselves to learn about themselves and their capabilities. And it was literally an eye-opening experience for her. She said how smart the children were. She was amazed how they didn't have good grades in regular school, but they're so intelligent here. And then during their arts and crafts, she told the children to draw themselves, and they were drawing like white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. So that tells you about how far deep self-hatred and black beauty standards got into even black children. So it pretty much broke Shakur's heart that she got black magazines when she was working with Ebony and stuff like that. She got all these black news clippings and put it around the classroom. And yeah, she tried to preach the importance of black beauty and the importance of that, so they can be some self-fulfillment within them. And yeah, then she was talking about how she went from JoAnne Chesimard to Assata Shakur. So it was back when she was in college that she made friends with some African people, specifically the Republic of New Africa was around too, and they had these festivals and stuff like that. And they asked her if she wanted to be a citizen, and she said sure. And she said what she had to do to become a citizen, and they said you can sign your name with a citizen book, and you have to go by an African name. So she tried to search for an African name. And yeah, she literally talked about her name Chesimard, her last name Chesimard. And she said, like, somebody named Chesimard has been the slave master of my ex-husband's ancestors. So I think by the time she was married, so that's how she got the last name Chesimard. And she was thinking about Chesimard, like most other last names black people use today, was derived from massa. Black folks went from being Mr. Johnson's, Mary and Mr. Jackson's, Paul, to being Mary Johnson and Paul Jackson. Sometimes before dozing off to sleep, I would lie in bed and think about it, wondering how many slaves Chesimard had owned in Martinique and how often he beat them. I would stare up at the ceiling, wondering how many black women Chesimard had raped, how many black babies he had fathered, and how many black people he had been responsible for killing. And then she tried to think of names that focus on liberation and freedom for black people. and she wanted something that was fierce. So she went with Assata Alagbala Shakur. Assata means she who struggles. Alagbala means love for the people, and I took the name Shakur out of respect for Zayd and Zayd's family. Shakur means the thankful, and Zayd was the Black Liberation Army member, and they probably met when they were in community college, and he died from the New Jersey Turnpike shootout that she was in, and I think that was beautiful. Yeah, so yeah, after that, she was talking about how she was trying to learn more into communism and movement building and liberation, and how there are these different types of communisms and there's the different types of capitalism. Like she learned about Marxism, Maoism, who else was it? It was Trotskyites or something like that. Maoist collectivists and stuff like that. Yeah, Trotskyites, Leninists and stuff like that. She learned about them. Yeah, and she said the more she got into like social movements, so protest, helping people, the educating children during a student teacher program, and I think it was like a freedom school, a liberation school to them. She said the more active I became, the more I liked it. It was like medicine, making me well, making me whole. I was home. For the first time, my life felt like it had some real meaning. And she's talking about doing all those give her such purpose. Like she felt like she belonged in that moment. Her existence serves that purpose. Her existence is fighting for people, and she gains such fulfillment from it. And yeah, she was also talking about pretty much got into what capitalism is. She said capitalism meant that rich businessmen owned the wealth, while socialism meant that the people who made the wealth owned it. And as long as you got a system with a top and a bottom, black people are always going to wind up at the bottom because we're the easiest to discriminate against. And yeah, she pretty much talked about racial capitalism and pretty much how capitalism is pretty much a system of exploitation. And then she got into while she appreciated like leftism, socialism, and communism, how she never became a member of like the Communist Party of USA or something like that, and socialist groups on campus, because white people, even when they're filing in the leftist ideology, there's always this superiority complex that it's something that they feel like, because they know the struggles of black people, and Assata was so turned off by that, and she pretty much how no matter, even if you side with the oppressed, you can be the oppressor and stuff like that. So they probably think that they're not racist when like racism is a practice or something and stuff like that. Like you have to unlearn racism. You can't just study and think you're good. You have to do the practice. So going back into theory and practice that she talked beforehand. And she talked about the importance of black self-determination. So it's important for black people to have their own groups and have these politics with these groups. And she said, if we do not have the rights to determine our destinies, then who does? And she said, I believe in uniting with white revolutionaries to fight against a common enemy, but I was convinced that it had to be on the basis of power and unity rather than from weakness and unity at any cost. Yeah, so pretty much critiquing whiteness whenever white people are in spaces that occupy spaces that even try to critique whiteness. And then at the end of this, she made this beautiful poem to her mom. It's another one of my favorites that she wrote. I'll say it. That's one of my favorites. She said, to my mama who has swallowed the American dream and choked on it, to my mama whose dreams have fought each other and died, who sees but cannot bear to see a volcano eating its own lava, to my mama who couldn't turn hell into paradise and blamed herself, who has always seen reflected in her mirror an ugly duckling, to my mama who makes no demands of anyone 'cause she don't think she can afford to, who thinks her money talks louder than her womanhood. To my butch femme mama, who has always taken care of business, who has never drifted hazily to sleep thinking he will take care of it, who has schemed so much she sometimes schemes against herself. To my sweet shy mama, who is uneasy with people 'cause she don't know how to be phony and is afraid to be real, who has longed for sculptured gardens, whose potted plant dies slowly on the windowsill. We all have been infected with a sickness that can be traced back to the auction block. You must not feel guilty for what has been done to us. Only the strong go crazy, the weak just go along. And what I thought was cruelty, I understand was fear. That hands stronger than yours and wider than yours would strangle my young life into oblivion. Mama, I am proud of you. I look at you and see the strength of our people. I have seen you struggle in the dark, the world beating on your back, dragging your catch back to our den, pulling your pots and pans out to cook it. A mop in one hand, a pencil in the other, marking up my homework with your love. The injured have no blame. Let it fall on those who injure. Leave the past behind where it belongs and come with me toward tomorrow. I love you, Mommy, 'cause you are beautiful, and I am life that springs from you. Part tree, part weed, part flower. My roots run deep. I have been nourished well. And that was the end of chapter 12. And yeah, that was one of my favorite poems that she got in this book. So, yeah, that was a tribute to her mom, and pretty much appreciated generational struggle. And yeah. So yeah, thank y'all for tuning into this video, and stay tuned for part 3. It's going to be the last part. It's going to be focused on chapter 13 all the way to the postscript. So it was a part after chapter 21, and all of them are short. So the video is not going to be as long as this one now. But make sure y'all follow my reading list page at Raisin Souls, a raisin as in a raisin in the sun by Lorraine Hansberry, and Souls by the Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. And follow my Instagram at Intellectualbert. And thank y'all for tuning into this video. Yeah, I suggest literally reading this book. It literally makes you thinking of, you can literally see yourself in Assata's writing. And she's not an academic. She's literally was a working class person up until she escaped into Cuba and stuff like that. So you can definitely, the language is familiar. You will understand her. And yeah, thank y'all, and take care, and stay blessed.